Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of an unexpected podcast. This is the first episode in 2022, and joining me today is Evan from Boston and Rainier from South Korea, and my name is Mick, and I'm in the sunny, or rather really grey, London in the UK. So today we're gonna cover one list, just like we always do. Then we're going to go into an interesting discussion on veto system, which is something that apparently the Australians use in some of their tournaments, and that this is inspired by the fact that there's been a poll a few days ago on the Middle Earth competitive page on Facebook, where people voted on whether they would like to implement veto systems in tournaments. So let's just get first into the list. This is an Isengard list. So over the last few episodes, we've been covering Rohan. So we thought it would make sense to talk about Isengard as the enemy of Rohan. So we have a 1,000 point list from Stephen Brown, who posted on our YouTube comment section. He is saying he has a 1K tournament coming up in New Zealand, wanted some help in Isengard list. Probably going to be rolling on the 6 different charts and a match playbook for scenarios. And he wants to stay away from siege weapons as a personal choice. So he goes with a regular Saruman-led army. So in the first warband, he has Saruman on horse. That's the leader of the army. Then he's got Grima, 4 Uruk-hai warriors with crossbows, 4 warriors with shields, 6 warriors with pikes, 1 warrior with a shield and a banner. The second warband is Thrydan, leading 6 Dunland horsemen. The third warband is Gorulf, leading 4 warriors with crossbows, 2 warriors with shields, 4 warriors with pikes. Then warband 4 is Vrasku, leading 4 warriors with crossbows, 2 warriors with shields, and 4 warriors with pikes. And warband 5 is the Wildman Oathmaker, leading 8 wildmen. In total, he's got 54 models, and there are 12 crossbows plus Vrasku here. So just an interesting thing to note from the start, the way that warbands 3 and 4 are built, it looks like he's going to be going for 2 warriors with shields at the front, and then 2 pikes behind, and 2 pikes behind again. So yeah, it looks like a pretty solid, interesting list to start with. So I'll pass it on to you guys first to see what you got, what you think. What about you, Rainier?
I think it's really interesting. Like I do see that it's kind of those warband 3 and 4. You get that kind of diversity of warrior choice, I guess. I always like to do suppressing fire with the Corsairs, spread out the crossbows in a list to give it more mobility. I can see someone arguing against it with Isengard just because Vrasku has heroic accuracy and like you want a lot of crossbows in his warband for that. So I think like right off the bat, it has the makeup to be a solid list. I would change up a few things. One of them would be the horsemen. I think I would spread them for 12 points. It's really cheap for the gentleman horsemen. I don't think you need 6 in one warband because it's very easy to isolate, being like, okay, that's the warband with the cavalry. That's where all the chargers are going to get. I just have to isolate that part of the field. So I would probably spread them out a little bit, throw them 1 or 2 in each warband, and also add Creebane. I think Creebane are so good, especially for a list like this, because they can go jump and get objectives. I'm realizing now that a strong list, but no one has Rogue March. That's another weakness you might come up against.
Vrasku does.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Vrasku does. That's why we have Evan. Evan, we pay him so he can just correct all the things we say incorrect.
Ooh, I wish I was paid.
Yeah, because you'd make a ton.
Are you not?
Okay.
Well, wait. I thought.
Oh, are they funneling all the
you were
money
all
to
being
you,
paid.
Mick?
Yeah. No.
Wait, you're getting paid, Mick? Yeah, Devin gives you like £2 like
Yeah.
a month. That's
Yeah, he
weird.
gives me like 199 just so I can buy one of those old blister packs once every 3 months or so.
He just gives me one of those like frog chocolates. once a Christmas. So I just thought
Yeah.
this
I think we need to start a revolution here, Rainier. Gotta fight for better pay.
I think we do, but the revolutions here in South Korea aren't that peaceful.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of hard to organize when we're like all across the world. We'll figure something out.
Exactly. Yeah, we should call ourselves something fancy. But anyways,
Yeah,
I
the
do.
Illuminati. Call it something like that.
We can wear those
Yeah.
masks.
Yeah.
But I do like the diversity of your heroes a lot. I think the Oathmaker is amazing. For his points, I love growth as like a big power punch. I do like Thryden as well. Vrasku, I'm a big fan of Vrasku and Saruman. But yeah, the one thing is like diversify the horses and the warbands, add some Creebane, because even if you do have just one march at 1,000 points, especially with some of these objective games, you're gonna want to throw Creebane all over the place, and even to like stop a hero from doing so much. Yeah, that's my only, I guess, thing is consider putting more crossbows in Vrasku's warband, spread the horses, and get some Creebane.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with all of what Rainier is saying. I'd say the first thing that stands out to me that Rainier maybe didn't discuss, or either that or I missed it, is Thryden is listed here as not having a horse. I don't know if that was a typo and they just never bothered to mention it. But if he doesn't have a horse, then definitely get him a horse. It seems like you want him to be the leader of your cavalry warband. So if you don't have a horse, get him that. Other than that, let's see here. I think your bow limit isn't maxed out, which I think is something you may want to consider. Obviously, with Isengard, you have the whole shield, pike, crossbow problem where you can't take multiple on one model. So obviously, you don't have to max out your bow limit, but crossbows are so strong that I would strongly consider it. And this is more of a personal preference thing, but I honestly really don't like the Oathmaker. And I know there's going to be some contention on that because Rainier, you said you really like the Oathmaker. But the Oathmaker, in my mind, does two things and only two things. Number one, he provides auto pass courage for your 8 wildmen, which is okay, but you can also accomplish that with a shaman. But he also provides 3 might, and that's sort of it. Personally, I would almost be tempted to drop the Wildman and the Wildman Oathmaker and take like a shaman and just more warriors, because you're not really having problems with might. You've got 12 and then 15 with the Oathmaker, down to 13 without it, and I don't think that's a huge drop. Also, wildmen suck. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. Defense 3 is absolutely horrible, and sure, they're going to auto pass courage tests, but they're going to auto pass courage tests, charge into the terrifying stuff, and then die. So I think in that respect, maybe getting more Urukai warriors and then a shaman if you really want to pass those courage tests. Or alternatively, just fill out all your warbands, take a bunch of berserkers, and then you've got your auto pass courage stuff right there. So I'd personally say drop the Oathmaker.
I think one thing though, Evan, because I do see your points, I think it's the cost of them, because one berserker is 3 wildmen, one warrior with shield is 2. So I think he's trying to get his numbers up, if that makes sense. Because even just switching them for the shaman.
I mean, how many
and the warriors you have?
How many open warband slots are there? There are actually quite a few, as far as I can tell. Gorolf and Vrasku have 10 models each in the warband. Thryden has 6 of 12, and Saruman has 1 open slot. Never mind. Saruman doesn't have any open
So like
slots.
getting rid of the Oathmaker warband full and just like maxing
Yeah,
out with
because you have 10 slots to fit in. So drop the Oathmaker and 8 Wildmen. Wildmen are what, 5 points each? So you get, is the Oathmaker 55 or 60?
yeah, so you get 95 points for
Yeah,
that warband.
95 or 100. And then you can fit in like 6 berserkers, six berserkers, and then like, a random orc warrior or something. And then you drop down to 52 models, but you get a lot more punch with the berserkers. You've got your auto pass courage stuff that can actually do damage, because wildmen aren't going to do any damage, but your berserkers definitely are. I think that's definitely something to consider. Obviously, if you really like the Oathmaker and the Wildman, take the Oathmaker and the Wildman. But personally, I wouldn't make that choice.
I would take the Oathmaker and I would project him to have an electric guitar instead of the knife. And he just looks like a rock and roll. And then you can like have all of the Wildmen, of course, give them axes, but also just make them ready. I'm sleep deprived, guys.
Yeah, I think I agree with most things which both of you have said. I mean, I personally also wouldn't necessarily be taking the Oathmaker here. And also the 6 Dunlon horsemen, they can easily go into the other warbands. So I would go with like 2 into Saruman's warband, 1 into Gorulf's, 1 into Vrasku's, keep 2 in Trident, then maybe move some other models into Trident just to have it more balanced too. And obviously give him a horse. I like the idea of filling up on more crossbows too, because I think you can have like 6 more, I believe. So that's something I definitely consider.
Yeah, but it is a good list, I think.
Yeah.
Like a shout out to like how you form your war bands with like the shield, the crossbows, and the pikes. Like it's a good composition of like each war band being its own punch, having shooting and support and like a different punch in combat. I'm also way curious about tournaments in New Zealand in general. If you could comment if you're watching this episode and let us know what that's like. I think Zorbazorp, he said in a recent video that he's actually going to move to New Zealand. So I wonder what the scene is and what it will look like down there, both on the North and South Island. Yeah, but yeah, that's what we got, right?
Yep. Well, good luck with your tournament. Hopefully you do well. So we'll be moving into our next topic. So if you are a member of the EMI SBG Competitive Players Forum on Facebook, then you may have seen on the 24th of December, George Downing created a poll where he asked about using veto systems for picking scenarios at tournaments. That was inspired most likely by the recent article on Against All Odds blog, where the author, Ben, I believe it is, talked about vanquishers and how they could be fixed, because a lot of people think that vanquishers are an army that requires fixing because they are so powerful in certain scenarios and not so powerful in some other ones. So in a way, it creates a negative play experience for opponents where you get to play against them in certain scenarios. So you go, okay, well, I've pretty much lost before the game has started, and therefore we might as well just go and get ourselves a drink. Or you get into a position where the game itself isn't very enjoyable because it's essentially just a situation where you're just throwing models into combat and hoping that the vanquishers are going to roll badly. So there are.
So is it like a question in the meta overbalance, basically?
So again?
Overbalance. So basically, love all the new legendary legions, but like some armies just win certain scenarios. Some armies just use certain scenarios. So is it more of the veto system came up as a question, organic question of like, should we rebalance or rethink about rebalancing things?
Yeah, I think so. And also it's a system which apparently has been used in Australia in the past in some tournaments. And obviously there are some really good players out there in Australia. So it would be interesting to see what they actually think about this and whether they prefer it over using just a normal system. So I'll share the results of the poll. So it looks like I personally voted for either doing the veto system or doing it, but not at every event. So because I think having the choice is a good idea. So out of all the people who voted, 42 votes went for having veto systems with current pools, then 33 for having no veto at all, and then it varied for having veto at some events, having veto with random scenarios, reorganized pools, or as Jasmine, for example, pointed out, using the same system that we've always used, but change the seize the prize scenario to having 3 prizes. So I suppose I'll ask the question to both of you guys. What do you think about a situation where where in every round, let's say the TO selects 3 scenarios, whether it's a pool or just 3 randoms, and then tells the players at every table, okay, one of you gets to pick which one you don't want to play, then the other one gets to pick which one you don't want to play, and then you play a third one. So essentially, across a round, there might be like 20 games, but each game plays a different of the 3 scenarios. What are your thoughts on that?
Evan, you should go first because I'm kind of new to the discussion.
Okay.
This is the first time I've heard this, to be honest.
So
y'all sent me the link and I was like, what? But also interesting. Oh, Aussies Down Under coming up with good ideas. But you go first, Evan.
yeah, I think this is an imperfect solution to a problem that should not exist. Basically, the veto system is put in place so you don't have to play all of the trash scenarios that exist in the book. And I'm not saying all of the scenarios are trash, but I'm saying that sometimes you will play scenarios where you don't have a chance to win. And I personally don't believe that should happen. And I think probably we've talked about this before in previous episodes, but those scenarios probably should be de-extremified, I guess to say. So stuff like Contest of Champions, Seize the Prize, which was obviously mentioned there, stuff like that, which is just won so quickly and so easily by some armies and just completely lost by other armies. That sort of disrupts the whole balance of the game and causes those unfun situations. And I think it's a shame that measures aren't taken by the rules writers to change those scenarios, though I do know that that's how they like the scenarios to be. So I think then if we're just going under the assumption that the scenarios cannot be changed, I think the veto system solves some problems and opens up some other problems. Obviously, as you guys have mentioned, it means that you can always just veto Contest of Champions, veto Seize the Prize, veto Lords of Battle if you've got a Horde army, something like that. And in that sense, it will balance out the game. It will also mean that some scenarios are never played at tournaments and some scenarios are played a lot at tournaments. So something like your domination, your to the death, something like that, the more balanced scenarios that multiple armies have good chances in will be played a lot. And stuff like Lords of Battle and Contest of Champions and everything I've mentioned will be played almost never because they're extremely unbalanced and usually favor one side. On the flip side, and I think Devin mentioned this in a past podcast episode, this can actually disproportionately assist armies like Goblin Town, whose only real bad matchup is Lords of Battle, and they're great at everything else. So Goblin Town goes, okay, I'm going to eliminate Lords of Battle every single time. And oh great, now Goblin Town is always in a good matchup and they're dominating even more than they already are. So I'd say the veto system is, I guess, almost a double-edged sword in that sense. Do I think it's better than the system we have now? Possibly, I'd say. I think the whole random system just creates so many unfun scenarios that even if it makes some lists disproportionately strong, like Goblin Town, the veto system will just improve the overall gameplay experience. So I'd say that over nothing. I think it's a decent change.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna pair a lot of what you say, to be honest. But the one thing that popped up when I was reading this was, okay, there are people outside of America that see that the current.
There are people outside of America.
I was
right
about
here,
to
yeah?
say, I thought that was going to be
Whoa,
the end of your
whoa,
sentence.
whoa, whoa.
I'm not being ethnocentric. No, because we discuss as Americans.
In fact, you're outside of America right now. You're one of the
That's
people.
true.
There may be very few people
I'm
out there.
starting a group. I just go to like a PC bongs, and I just like go to these big like PC gaming places and like, have you heard of the religion of SBG? I just try to convert as many people as possible. No one has come to my side, but I'm still trying, guys. I'm still trying. So no, but Americans, I feel like we discuss the problem with the scenarios all the time. You know this, Evan. You talk about it. I talk about it. Devin talks about it. Your dad talks about it. There are so many holes to where, like, at least I feel more so with Devin that everything can be fixed if you just tweak a couple of the scenarios, make people fight closer in some of them, make there be less of a chance in other ones, and balance it out a team bit. Because I'll use an example from, I think it was 2 years ago, Articon, round one. I was there when it was drawn. Heirlooms of Ages Past was drawn randomly for the first one, and like 200 people gasped and were like, because they knew that like
Yeah, that should
lot of
not
your,
be
like,
the reaction to a scenario. There shouldn't be that
exactly.
much
It was
hatred.
like a chorus of internationalism of everyone going, because everyone knew they like prepared so long and trained. And like the first game, there was going to be like a lot of it was just chance. So I don't like that in scenarios, and I don't like that as a competitive player, especially with all the new Legendary Legions being so thematic. I love them. I'm not complaining about Legendary Legions, but they're like strong on one side, really weak on the other. And with the scenarios, it's literally you come to events and you're like, depending on the draw, I'm going to win or lose when it comes to scenarios. I don't like that aspect of it. So for me, the veto system, I just heard about it recently. I think it does fix stuff, but just like Evan, it does back to imbalance it as well. And Goblin Town, just like Evan, popped up into my mind because it's like, oh, the one scenario that Goblin Town's afraid of in any of the pools, and it's just one pool really, they can just veto it. So you can have like these huge horde armies that are going to do really, really well. So that'd be my only thing, but I do think I like the idea. I mean, if it's working down there, I'm curious what other people think about it. I like the idea and discussion.
I think it sort of depends on whether you would be using the pools in addition to the veto, or if you were using, let's say, 3 random scenarios from the book and telling people, okay, these are your 3 for this round, and then veto these ones. Like, let's say if you get a situation of, say, assassination plus contest plus seize the prize, obviously a lot of people are going to dislike seize the prize, but then others will go, oh, I hate contest too. So there's this other one which I have to deal with. But like if it's something like, let's say you get pool number 4 and you have Galadriel as your leader, then you go, okay, well, I'm just not going to play Contest of Champions because that's the only scenario where Galadriel is a bad leader. In all other games, she's completely fine, and since I have a balanced army, I don't really mind the other scenarios. I also think I wouldn't necessarily say it will favor Goblin Town. I would actually say it will favor more extreme lists than just Goblin Town, because you get to cancel out 6 scenarios that are really bad for you. So I'm not sure it would fix something like Vanquishers or the Ringwraith Legion, because you would go, okay, well, out of these 3 scenarios, my vanquishers cannot win at this. They can easily win at this other thing, so my opponent is going to veto that. And then the third one is probably something I'm pretty good at anyway. So I'm not sure that really solves the problem, unless it's one of those situations where you get, again, like 3 randoms. So then if it's like three scenarios which are always going to be bad for vanquishers, then it's not really much of a choice then, because it's either bad or worse, or even worse. Plus, I actually personally don't mind playing scenarios where I'm quite unfavored. Even though, like, I suppose in my really competitive days, I always hated the fact that I might get a really bad scenario and then I'm going to lose without even having much of a fight. But then a few weeks ago, I went to a tournament where I was playing against Sauron at 550 points into the death with my Gondor and Fiefdoms list. And basically, in addition to him having Sauron, he also had a banner and I didn't. So pretty much whatever happens in the game, I will almost always either draw or lose, unless I'm able to kill Sauron. But I still feel like there was some play in it, and I could have made better choices throughout the game, which would have maximized my potential to victory. So personally, I don't really take a specific tournament result as the be all and end all. I would rather just look at individual games and say, okay, well, even though I was probably going to lose, there are certain mistakes I made which cost me the game even further. So I don't really necessarily dislike the fact that you're gonna end up with bad scenarios once in a while. I think that's just the thing which makes this game really cool, in that you do get those really bad situations like in the books or in the films, and you just overcome them. So if it was like a ultra competitive, if let's say it was a thing like Ardacon where people came from all over the world and paid a lot of money to come, and they really wanted to win it, then I would say make it as even as like the least luck dependent as possible, which is something they're already doing at Ardacon, where there's, for example, only four tables and they are repeated across the entire hall. So you can only play at 4 different types of terrains. But if it was any other tournaments where, let's say, you go to a tournament once a month or once every couple of months, then I don't really mind having this variety and this randomness thrown into it.
No, yeah, I totally get what you're talking about. I think like when it comes to balancing or like making it more even, I think that's when you are talking just solely when it comes to the really competitive events. Because anything else, like, it's a free for all. Like, you're there to have fun. You know what I mean? You're not going to go to your local tournament with an A-tier list and just like smash all these new members at a game.
Oh yeah, I would, but then
you would, yeah, but you're British, so that makes sense.
Well, no, I'm Polish actually. Well, so
that makes it worse.
Yeah, no, I'm both British, Polish. So
they basically cooked up like the worst, like the most competitive SBG like player. They took Poland and the UK and they created a monster, and you're that monster, Mick.
Yeah, I'm the Hulk.
You just basically like roll sixes after sixes.
You only think of one thing, and that's destroying your opponents.
Souls, destroying their souls. That's what it is.
You know, it's when you pull up to a table and they set their models out and you set out like a timer.
Okay, so on this veto thing, so what about the solution where, let's say, you get 1 veto per tournament rather than having one per game?
That's what I was thinking. You give 1 veto to each person in the tournament, and you say you can veto at least 1 scenario from each pool, or one scenario from 1 pool once in the tournament. And that even plays like a whole like cat and mouse game with the competitive players, because then they're gonna like possibly save their vetoes for the later tables, save it for this and that. So I think that brings like out a really good keep the scenarios, but also give a little balance and a little spice to life.
Mhm.
So I'd be up for that. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's supposed to be somewhere where I would start before going all into vetoes.
Mm. Yeah, and it would be, I don't know. You could really like play with it too, and like, oh, like this round, these people use their vetoes. Like now they
Mhm.
have like a different check by their name or something like that. So yeah, it's really cool. You could maybe name it something like cool and theme. Like each person gets a Plantier. You call it the Plantier, where you just like take out one of the three scenarios.
Yeah, it definitely adds a nice aspect of strategy to it where it's like, oh, this matchup's pretty bad. But I'm kind of on low tables, so do I really want to use my veto here? Could the matchup be worse later on? That's definitely
Yeah.
an interesting dynamic to that whole thing.
And not
Um,
just competitive players too. You could get people that just hate a certain
yeah,
scenario,
Yeah,
and like they just go to tournament. They don't really play to compete, but they just hate a certain scenario, and they can just veto that scenario, and it would make their day.
so
yeah. A
imagine.
lot of people in our group absolutely despise Reconnoiter, and while I don't count myself among
Oh, I love it.
that group, yeah, I love Reconnoiter as
It's
well.
like
But a
the
lot of
most
people
stressful,
hate it.
intense
Yeah,
scenario on the field.
and the ability to just say, you know what, Reconnoiter was drawn. I am not going to do that. Is great. And unfortunately, we've lost Mick here. He was probably stolen by the rain gods of London. But I guess Rainier and I will just be talking for
He's
now.
turning into super hybrid. He's adding some German to his Polish and British.
Yeah, he is.
No, but I get you, Evan. Like I get you. For me, it's Contest of Champions. I hate that scenario. I don't know if it's like because I don't bring big money,
Well,
but
I
it's just.
mean, you take Dalamir as your leader, so I think I can understand.
But even with Soladan or Gothmog or anything, everything's too fast. And I want to take my time. I want to go fight right off the bat. You don't go to like a sparring match and just start like stabbing each other.
That's
Take your
true.
time.
Contest of Champions is a fun one because it doesn't matter what like 90% of your army does. It's completely down to which hero wins the duel. Like I
Yeah.
think I've talked about this game before, but I played a game against Devon at 500 points where he had both Gullivar and the Witch King, and I had Rangers of Athelion. And basically all of his orcs died, and it didn't matter because he killed Faramir. And he won like 10-2 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And I'm a lot of people complain about how, you know, you can do everything right and then you can just have a hero that's weak to magic and you just lose, or you botch one roll and you lose. So scenarios like that, I think, are inherently uncompetitive just as an overall feel.
Sorry, I just got a delivery. One sec.
Okay. Now he's adding some Australian to his hybrid.
Yeah.
So he's
At the end of this podcast, he's just going to be like a cornucopia abomination thing with like different nationalities spouting out of him.
Yeah, someone's in the corner. Run the numbers. Yeah, he's gonna win Articon. Run the numbers. So sorry, Mick. We're just telling everybody that you're like adding hybridness. But that said, yeah, I think the game is fun for so many people in different ways.
Mhm.
And I think when it comes to changing something, you have to think about not just the super competitive players, but you got to think about the whole event. Like let's say that's 30 or 40 people at an event, maybe up to 80. Think about all what's going to make it fun. And that's why, in my opinion, the one rule, again, name it something cool like Plantier rule. Just get rid of one thing, then everyone's like just scenario they hate. They cannot play that.
Mhm.
That's my fix right there. Will it have holes? Most likely, because then like certain armies, competitive players can play really well, but I don't know. I might actually implement that once I run another event.
So actually, picking up on what you just said a moment ago, Rainier, you said that Contest of Champions, it just ends too quickly for you, right? So on the same tournament where I was playing against Sauron to the death, another round, it was actually the final round of the tournament. I got drawn in command the battlefield against the Ringwraiths Legendary Legion. So that's a scenario where I think the Ringwraiths would probably veto it if they could, because there were only like 5 or 6 of them against my whole army. But at the same time, the game ended about 15 minutes into it, and we both went home, and I was actually fine with that. So, and my opponent apologized for finishing so quickly, but essentially he said, well, this is how this legion works, and in a way, to me, it's something where if this is how the legion is designed and it's part of the game, then I don't really mind the fact that the game might end in 10 or 15 minutes. But then there are people out there who would rather play the entire like two-hour round and then end it. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that, because that's another quite a controversial subject with things like these two specific legions, and which also kind of give you the idea that maybe the veto should be implemented in some way.
Yeah, I think that goes back to discussion we've had in previous episodes, which runs down to just this. Sometimes what's fun for you is not fun for the other person.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so I think
sometimes what's optimal in that scenario is not fun for either person.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing to bring up, and it does depend, because if you do bring like 6 Ringwraiths, like you're there, just have a fast-paced game, like that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
And we can't, I guess, point the finger at those who bring Sauron to Contest of Champions and it's drawn. You know what I mean? We can't really point the fingers at those who just bring Goblin Town and they draw something that favors Goblin Town, or Lords of Battle and they have all hero lists. Like it's not their fault, and we shouldn't really be saying stop that. Let's balance it to where we're having more fun, because yeah, you bring it up well, and like typically those lists aren't really played by super competitive, like I need to win this tournament also. So I don't know, it's something to think about.
Because it's like one of those situations where it used to happen where, let's say, you blew up your whole army with the Legendary Legion with the ballistas and the bombs, and you went, okay, well, I can't win this scenario, so let's draw it on turn 1 in 5 minutes. I'm just going to blow up my whole army. Instead, there is a bit of play and a bit of figuring out how things work. But like my opponent was apologizing to me for doing what he did, and I was like, why are you apologizing? Like this is how the game works. This is how this army plays. So I don't think you should fault the player. At the same time, I think it's quite nice that an army like this exists.
Maybe I get that. Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily if, let's say, if a lot of people are complaining about something like Vanquishers, maybe there is something too powerful in certain scenarios. But I generally think if an army has been designed that ends the game in 20 minutes, then it's equivalent to ending a game in 2 hours. It's just chances are after those 2 hours, something's going to come down to like a single dice off. Or also the other question is, if let's say if we actually end up playing out for 2 hours, then at the end he decided to pop all of his Ringwraiths, then how does that differ from popping them after 10 minutes? Essentially, the result is the same, except we moved toys for like additional 100 minutes.
Yeah, it fascinates me how this has become such a mainstream topic of discussion recently, with just being able to kill your entire army at any point of the game and end the game when you want it. When Ed Ball was doing this like 10 years ago, and I didn't see much discussion on that. Yeah, I don't know if it's just the creation of the Ringwraith Legendary Legion almost promoting that sort of thing, where it's almost like they created this cookie cutter thing to be able to do that with. But I mean, being able to kill your entire army and then end the game on the spot is not a new thing. And obviously people have made posts talking about how, some scenarios, Ringwraiths have like a formula to be able to win most of the time. which I don't know if I agree with that. But I personally don't have a problem with ring wraiths killing themselves. I also didn't have a problem with Isengard armies blowing themselves up, but I know people do. So it'll be interesting to see if specifically for that legendary legion, they'll make some sort of change to stop the ring wraiths from killing themselves. Though
Yeah,
I question how they would implement that though, because if worse comes to worse, you can drain yourself down to one will. Like, how would you just say you can't spend your last will with the ring wraiths? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that would have to be a change in the main rules. You can't spend your final point of will if that will kill you or something like that.
Yeah, and are the ring wraiths really like dominating events?
No, I don't. I'm not sure
doesn't seem like
it's.
they
I'm not
would.
sure it's necessarily about dominating events. It's more about the whole negative play
Fun play
experience.
experience.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah, I see.
which is also probably the reason why some people want to implement vetoes, because you want to veto the game which will be a negative play experience for at least one of you, well, at least for yourself, because if you're playing with ring wraiths, then chances are you enjoy this sort of stuff. So it's only your opponent who might not enjoy it.
Mm.
Like in the same way, if Articon 200 people suddenly go when heirlooms comes around, then I think everybody would just use their veto on game one.
Yeah,
unless
at least somebody should be having fun for a rule to be considered competitive, because I don't think when everybody groans at a particular scenario, that scenario should exist at all.
Yeah,
but then imagine a situation where, let's say, both players want to veto heirlooms, and then you go, okay, well, I want to veto it, you want to veto it, but like we each have a veto, so which one of us should do it? Do you roll a dice?
Well, I think what you would do is you'd roll off, and then one person does their veto first, and then the next person does their veto. I think you'd have to do an order to the veto system.
Yeah, the Australian article said they do it evil vetoes and then good or good. They alternate back and forth like that. But I don't.
A bit like heroic moves.
No. It would be cool though to be like everyone's size, and you got to be like, okay, like when do you have to do it, and then like write down like on a paper like you used to do with Fog of War.
Oh yeah.
Yes or no, or write down on a piece of paper whether you're going to veto. So like, for example, just to make it even, have, okay, here are the 3 scenarios, write down no from not vetoing anything or the scenario. And if you both write down the same scenario, you flip, you both lose your veto.
What if
Spicy.
Actually go a bit further and like if both players veto, then the scenario stays the same?
Ooh. Do they keep their veto though?
No. You basically get to expand your veto, and if both of you
in spice here.
Yeah, they draw. Oh, and Rainier's gone. Yeah, I'm just imagining now, like they draw Lords of Battle, and then Goblin Town throws their veto down, and then the other person's like, nope, we're not doing that. We're doing Lords of Battle.
Well, no, but then you would have to, at the beginning of every round, you would go, okay, I'm gonna put my dice down, or I'm gonna write it down somewhere, and then you reveal simultaneously, and then see whether both players have vetoed.
That would be an interesting mind game.
Yeah. That way, yeah, you might go, okay, I want to veto Lords of Battle, but then the other person can expect you to veto it as well. So they'll try to level you, and both of them use the veto, and then it's gone. Or even there's a situation where you don't know that your opponent has already used the veto, and then let's say Lords of Battle comes up for goblins, and you think, okay, well, my opponent is definitely gonna veto this, so I'm gonna veto it. And then you accidentally veto it for them because they've already used theirs. There's so many possibilities.
Mind games, yes. Yeah, I feel like the whole veto system almost is like putting a band-aid over an infected wound, to make a very strong analogy there, because it's sort of covers up some of the problems inherent with our scenario system, which is our extreme scenarios, but it doesn't really fix the problem. And it kind of does, and we've already talked about why it also kind of doesn't. But I think probably the simplest change, if you're a TO and you really don't like those scenarios and you don't want them to be played, and you don't and you sort of want to make the scenarios more balanced, is you unfortunately create your own scenarios, which obviously you're not going to be able to do if you've got a big tournament and you're sponsored by GW and whatever. But at a smaller tournament, I'd say if you want to create your own scenarios and you feel like the scenarios in the rules pack aren't doing it for you, then go ahead. I think that's definitely one way to go. You don't always have to, implement a veto system just to get around the old scenarios. You can just create new ones. And I think there are some decent examples that have already been created. I've never really gone looking for them, but I'm sure they're out there. Like, people have created custom scenarios. You can always just modify an existing scenario to fit your needs. Towards the beginning of the episode, one of the poll options was seize the prize with 3 prizes. So you don't just grab one prize, run it off the board, and you win. That seems like a perfectly good, not necessarily a fix, but an improvement to a scenario. So if you're not sponsored by GW, why not implement that?
Yeah, there's actually the final of GBHL this year. And in fact, a Scouring of Stirlingshire, which is the tournament which is held in Scotland every year. There's basically, these guys play a scenario where they've modified Heirlooms of Ages Past, and I just pulled it up. Basically, it says here in the rules pack, the scenario is as printed, but the following 2 victory point modifications have been implemented. So you scored 5 VPs if your force is in possession of the relic at the end of the game, instead of 6 as per the standard scenario. And if the enemy force is broken and your force is unbroken, you score 3 victory points instead of 2 as per the standard scenario. And additionally, to achieve a major victory, you must have more victory points than your opponent and be in possession of the relic at the end of the game. So you can actually just make slight modifications to make the scenarios more balanced in a sense. Because in the original heirlooms, if you're holding the relic, you score 6 points, which I believe is the case that you can't actually lose if you're holding it.
Yeah, so I don't know if you remember, I think it was one of the first Articons, Mick.
Mm-hmm.
The heirloom scenario, actually, the heirloom gave you 7 points.
Right.
And then James actually modified it for Articon
Mm-hmm.
to what it is now, which is the heirloom gives you 6 points. The purpose of that is if your opponent has the heirloom, you can still draw.
Right.
And the purpose of that change that was it the Scottish players made?
Yeah.
Was to make it so if your opponent has the heirloom and you don't have a banner, you can still draw. And if you do have a banner, you can still win.
Yeah,
So
basically, if your opponent got lucky and found it and then put it in the corner and it's really good at protecting it with bodyguards or whatever else, and you're just never going to get to it.
Or they've got it on Gwahir and he's just running around the board.
Yeah, then if you do everything correctly, then you can still win it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's just like a minor modification, which is essentially just drop 1 point here, add 1 point here, and suddenly it just turns it from unwinnable game to, oh yeah, I can actually win it if I play if I do things right.
Yeah, and I've even seen those slight modifications, even not when it comes to winning and unwinning, but just preference. I've seen groups in the States change Maelstrom to where you alternate warbands between opponents. We could go down a rabbit hole with that one, but that's not necessarily a good change.
I mean,
but there's different ways you can alternate all the scenarios for whatever, whatever you fancy, in your region or group, especially something like Stirlingshire, because it's that's a Scottish event. They probably discussed the Scots probably discussed this is a problem that we're coming across. Let's fix it in this way.
Mhm.
Like each region probably has their own different thing that's a problem. Maybe hordes dominate here. How are we gonna like maybe like this legendary legion makes it not fun? How are we gonna fix that?
So the thing is, like the Sterling Share one, I played there in 2019 last time, and I think it's been going on for quite some time, where they always have the heirloom scenario, but it's always modified.
Interesting.
So I like it.
Yeah, and just sort of a caveat for people who are trying to create or modify their own scenarios. Playtest the scenarios multiple times and do so with different armies, just to make sure that you aren't making it worse than it is already, especially that Maelstrom modification I've seen before. And as I said before, it's not necessarily a good thing, because it can end up having armies just pile up on top of each other and just create a very weird dynamic and sort of unbalanced in a way, which isn't necessarily better than the alternative. So just make sure that the scenario plays the way you want it to play when you make it.
Also, technically, if you alternate warbands, you're actually breaking the way the game is designed
Yeah,
in the move
because
phase, because
technically
because
it's supposed to be priority.
yeah, because you go player A move phase, then player B finishes the move phase, then player A goes with one warband in another move phase, then player B goes with one of warband in another move phase. Like you're sort of creating like 6 move phases before you go to shooting phase, which could then lead to some other issues there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think that's why a lot of people are standing away from just creating scenarios by themselves, because I think we do see holes in a lot of scenarios, but they've put a lot of time and effort
Oh yeah,
into
of course,
making
yeah.
these.
I mean, they're really difficult to make.
Oh yeah, for sure, and they're probably more balanced than anything I could definitely come up with. But there are still, like, I mean, it's a global game, and you have different metas, and like the diversity of the armies and the legion and stuff. There are going to be situations where people are like, actually, like, I want to change this and that, or tweak it a little bit, balance it. I like using the word balance. It sounds diplomatic.
I like to use the word keep the equilibrium going.
Equilibrium.
See,
Let's make sure there's equity across the board
between the forces.
Oh gosh. No, but yeah, it does. And like, back to the veto system though. Do you guys, now that we've discussed it, think it is necessary in any substance?
I actually think I wouldn't mind playing tournaments with 1 veto per player per tournament. But I think too many. If it's ever around, then you just build a list and you go, okay, well, my list will never play these 6 scenarios, and so I'm just gonna build the list for the other ones.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I know that probably it's not gonna play the ones that it excels at. So essentially, let's just build a list for like 10 scenarios instead of all 18. Then veto 6 bad ones, and then hope everything aligns otherwise.
Yeah,
which actually
each pool does have like a wild card that's going to just mess you up.
Yeah.
And if you had the ability to like not play that wild card,
yeah,
like it's.
Yeah, so I think
I will say
veto
though,
system will actually lead to more extreme lists, but yeah, sorry, Evan, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that having 1 veto would create a massive spike in Galadriel's because she's no longer going to be playing Contest of Champions. So, well, I guess that would be a good thing.
And she's not even that bad at Contest of Champions.
No, she's not. As long as you have another killer to do the damage.
Yeah.
You just have to be able to transfix them turn 1, because otherwise problems will ensue.
Yeah. It's something to consider. I'd probably consider.
Oh, and you might actually see Denethor's too.
Oh yeah, I love Denethor. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, would he be good? Probably not, but he would exist, which would be nice.
I think you'd see larger armies, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to Denethor too. Like, he can lead a whole bunch, and he's like really cheap. Like, here comes Gondorian spam down. Like,
well, you say you'd see larger armies, but then in pool such as the which one? Oh yeah, the Maelstrom pool. Like if both players want to get rid of heirlooms, then tiny army will much prefer hold ground. Big army will prefer command the battlefield. So then if you're the tiny army, you go, okay, I'm just going to remove the command the battlefield, and then you get to pick whether we play the scenario we both hate or we play the scenario that favors me.
To be fair, if I were playing a horde, I would be perfectly happy with Heirlooms of Ages Past.
Yeah.
My opponent probably wouldn't, but I would.
But I think that goes back to the whole like maybe one veto per tournament.
Yeah.
And like it still does not guarantee you. So like let's say you use your veto on heirlooms, you guys are still rolling hold ground or command the battlefield. 1, 2, 3, hold ground. 4, 5,
Yeah, well,
6.
as long as the same pool remains, rather than you veto and then you just roll a brand new scenario.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious what our viewers think about this and stuff, and like what your region does, because I know we're talking about it's like an Australian meta. They asked it, but I'm curious like what German players, American players, British players, like Polish players think about it.
Yeah,
etc.
Well,
Yeah,
leave us some comments. We'd love to hear your opinions.
If you're an Australian player, like tell us how your meta has changed or maybe not changed due to that, because obviously we have no experience with this sort of system over here. So did you get larger armies when you took that veto system, or did nothing really change? We'd like to know.
Yeah, and like vote, would you rather have no veto, Aussie veto, or one veto per tournament and call it Palantir?
I would just call it Palantir.
Heck yeah, do the Palantir rule. You have like a whole bunch of could you imagine the beauty of it? Like you have like 100 nerds in one room. Just like, and you say like, oh, like Billy used his Palantir, like Kyle uses Palantir, like here we go. And you have like a little Excel sheet.
And you've got to shout like Palantir across the room whenever you use it.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
You can always go, ooh, I don't know who else can be watching. Very old seeing stones.
Exactly. You have the one guy in the corner all paranoid like Denethor. He's like, I've been seeing stuff. Like you don't know the power of the East. Like, calm down, bro.
All right, well, with that in mind, leave us some comments. Tell us what you think and tell us that we're wrong or that we're right. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. And Happy New Year's to everybody. Until next time. Oh yeah, Rainier is gone already. So
yeah, Rainier is just frozen in time and space. But I can say goodbye.
All right, thanks for listening. Take care.